them individually through this app. But this is to make sure that the position of the inverters, that's what he said is so important. Yes, you'll still send the settings individually to each inverter. ESS and stuff you can send individually to each inverter. But this configuration, the bus configuration app, sees the inverters in a bus configuration. What position is what in. If you go to phase 1, you'll see there's 2 inverters.
Yeah.
If this one, if I say right click and I say flash LEDs, you'll see it's the first one. Issue comes with is if you swap the position, you put that afterwards, and you send this configuration, send configuration, you can cause an issue because now you move your master to the next line. So now if I do this as a master, so it got the new configuration, you'll see the lights start flickering wrong, depending on how your wiring is. So if I say flash LEDs on the master, that one is flashing now. So you program it into a position, which one is the masters, which ones are the slaves. So it's very important to make sure that the positions of your bus system is correct. If you have only 3 inverters, it's very easy, your phase 1, 2 and 3. As soon as you go into parallel, you must make sure that the one you wire up as your master inverter, or you choose to be the master of it, and the programming of the master is correct in that position.
So what happens if you're setting this up the first time and your phases are mixed up? Will it show up?
Yes, so it will immediately, if you program a wrong phase rotation around, once you plug it in, it won't accept mains. If you have it connected to your GX will immediately say wrong phase rotation detected. So that's why I made the mistake a few times in the beginning by just programming. You do all the settings, take half an hour, whatever, you do all your settings, you switch on, it doesn't take mains. Now it says wrong phase rotation. Now I have to flash all of your inverters, change your rotations, make sure it picks up the right way around. Or you must go do your wiring around. So I've learned in the past, the easiest way is when you start your installation, take a phase rotation meter on your main breaker, test your phase rotation and work according to that. Make sure your incoming is clockwise phase rotation. Because as another NRS standard, they want it clockwise. If you have a single phase installation, they say you have to put your single phase installation on the red phase, on phase 1. So if you have a 3-phase house and you have one single inverter, how do you connect it? Make sure your phase rotation is correct and start your single phase inverter on your phase 1 to the backup.
If you're off the grid, then that becomes irrelevant.
If you're off the grid, it becomes irrelevant, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The really curious part is that yes, you've actually got 3-phase codes.
If you have,
makes quite all difference.
Perfect, 100% good answer. That if you have 3-phase machines and your inverters are programmed wrongly around, it's reverse rotation, your drill might go backwards. So,
but you can change it here and then it will...
You can change it here, yes.
What happens?
All depends on your wiring and how you set it up.
How would you change, if you would want to change your phase 1 and phase 2, you would just pull that one into that and that there, or how would you do that?
You can pull them all out into an unconfigured device. So you pull this into that little block that says unconfigured. If you start with them brand new without any programming, there will all be 6 inverters in the unconfigured device board. So throw them all in for you. All 6 inverters will be there in that page, all unconfigured. Now it's up to the installer to make sure which one is which one. So they're going to be all mixed up now. So that's why we use the flash LED.
It starts with single phase.
Yes, as well. But there's 2 different ways to do it. So I like to use VBus quick config. If you use 3-phase, it's much easier. It asks you switch off all devices. It will say switch on live 1. Switch on live 1, it immediately picks that as live 1. 2 and 3 in the end programs it as a 3-phase system already. So it depends on. But now you have 6 inverters, it becomes more difficult. So yes, then you're correct, and it starts here as a single phase at the bottom. It will sit there in single phase. Now you have only 1 phase showing up there. You can't put it, you can probably if you want to. You can have 6 in parallel if you want to.
What's the benefit of 6 in parallel versus?
There's no benefit at all. My eyes, it's worse. You have 6 times the amount of breakers. If you have 1
It's better just to buy one 15 kilowatts instead of trying to make up a...
Yes, then you have all the breakers.
And then what's the difference in that and building a 3-phase for a home?
So 3-phase is balance of loads. If you have a 3-phase supply, I would not put all my loads on one phase. I don't see that as a win. If you don't have solar to feed your loads, in some cases, City of Cape Town, I'm not sure if they still do it, but they used to read your highest phase and they build you 3 times on your highest phase. So putting in a single phase system on backup and you put all your loads on that single phase, it costs you more. It won't be very smart. So then I'll go for 3-phase system rather.
So the alternative is if you can convert the house back to single phase and just run a single phase.
That's also a good, yeah.
Cheapest installation and by far the easiest to manage.
Yes.
Well, you just said you pay a premium of 6 times.
That's, if that figure is correct. It depends on your area.
So yeah, that's a good point. If you can convert back to single phase, do it.
Yeah, it all depends on how big the cables are that they've loaded and your local grid. If everybody in the area has done it already, it'll be easy.
Yes. So now you want to be able to make sure it says 3-phase. This is important. There's only one AC input. These are not quattros. They physically only have one AC input.
I see. Yeah, there's no generator.
There's no generator.
But 2 out, 1 in.
Yeah, 2 out, 1 in. So you make sure it's on one input. This block, this is for different countries, not for South Africa. Keep it on live 2 and 3 fixed. Please don't change that. They will always be standardly on that. Okay, now it gives you a 3-phase setup. If you have quattros, you have 2 inputs, and you choose 2 inputs, it will look like this. So you'll still only use your first block, your second one will mimic your first one to what the generator will be. Easiest part, getting them in the right positions. So you can flash LED, see which one is flashing. In my eyes, that's the slave of the first phase. So I can put it in by the first phase, but now it sees it as the master. But we can change that, swapping them around later again. Flash LEDs, that's the first phase. I want that as the master. So I would pull that in by the first phase. There it gets important to make sure that the master is first. Flash LED, that's the second one. So what I want to do, I want to click and drag it to be after the master. So it's flashing still, it's flashing on the screen, flashing in real life, seeing that that's secondary, that's a slave.
So was the objective for these 3 to be the primary ones, or the masters, and these 3 the slaves, and they parallel one to the other?
Yes.
Although it won't be 1 and 1, it will be 1 and, or does that not matter?
No, so it all depends on how you wire breakers. You can make it any way you want to.
Yeah, but it
depends on how you wire it as well.
Wiring,
so we wired this as phase 1, 2 and 3, and then again slave phase 1, 2 and 3.
Yeah, but if you'd wired it different, it could have been that one over there.
It could have been phase 1 master and slave, phase 1. It can be phase 2 master and slave, phase 2, phase 3 master and slave.
Sorry, quick question that somebody else pointed out. Is there a reason there's no earth on this one?
On the output, we still have earth on this side.
Yeah, but all the others have got them linked across.
Yes, it could have been.
They are actually all
but if you take this earth cable out, if you take all of the wires out and you take a tester and you do a resistance test, you will see between that earth, the screws on the sides, the outside, it will all have less than 0.2.
Yeah.
0.2.
So why don't you have a sort of a chassis earth?
There was just wiring inconsistency. It's
That's
not,
just
it's
the
not
I see what you mean. Like we said, there's a lot of mistakes in here in the systems.
Linked to the chassis.
There is definitely a lot of mistakes. Most of them are intentional. Some of them might have been in a rush.
The question just came up, is it intentional? Is there a particular reason why
There's-
one master...
The other intentional area you'll see, not all of the earth cables are the same length.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. They're supposed to be all the same length. I had a long argument about having earths at the same length or not.
And?
So they came to the easy conclusion. He gave me an easy answer.
Mm-hmm.
What is Earth's purpose?
It's a safety.
It's a safety.
Yeah.
So if that inverter is closer to the DB, this one is far away from the DB. If that one's cable is directly short to the DB and this one has a long cable, It's going to take the shortest route, so that inverter will damage, won't
Now
it?
counter that.
Mm.
Every single earth in your house when an installation is a different distance from the spike, and yet they all work.
Yes, no, I understand that.
So the length of the earth to me makes absolutely no difference.
But it
It's not a
does.
signal. It's not a signal. It's just a reference level.
Yes, but if you put a spike to the short to the system,
But that's the same as saying that the place the furthest point of your buildings, then why don't you have multiple earth spikes?
yes, but
You
this is one system.
Yes,
Where a plug, if you have a fault on a plug, that earth will be used.
yeah,
If
but
you
what
have
I'm
a fault
saying
on a
here
light,
is
that
your
earth will be
system, your
used.
earth here is not reference to the system, it's reference to the building's earth. That is connected into the building's earth.
Yes, but I mean if you have a spike or a fault, if you have a live and an earth touching each other, or have a physical fault on the input of the system. Or am I explaining it wrong?
No, I think we're missing each other. The earth in the building is everywhere a different distance. So the fact that that's one system to me makes no difference.
Yes, but they're going
So
to a
the
communal bar.
doesn't matter. It's not critical. The DC side, I can see how the cable length is critical because you're talking fractions of a volt for the sensing, but not on the earth. Because it doesn't actually use it for anything. There is no current flow through the earth unless there's a fault. In that case, who cares?
So coming back to explanation, why would you want that one to go first? It's closest to your...
No, it's if you don't have it
Oh,
the
I
same
see.
length.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that will get damaged immediately.
So if you say it should be the same length, then you have to loop that one
Yeah.
somewhere here.
Although it's on the AC side.
Even though it's on the AC side, we have all our... So that's where live and neutrals, all of your AC cables must be the same length straight through. The reason for that is your components and your inverters will start working harder. That's again, power goes the shortest route. So if that inverter's wires are direct, this one is long wires.
Okay, so I disagree with you. If it's trapping at the speed of light, the meter makes no difference.
There's still resistance.
It's not about the resistance.
Yeah,
It's
it
not.
is.
It's coming from the council substation. You have to take the resistance
No,
from there.
if your
meter makes
system
no
is
difference.
disconnected to the grid and you're just using the outputs of the inverter load sharing wise, if that wire is 1 meter,
Okay.
this one is 10 meters.
Your incoming AC makes no difference.
It makes one difference when it's a short. Then remember, that's what I always said and what I tell everybody, it doesn't go about the basic working of the system. It's when the worst happens. So if there's a short circuit happening, it will follow the path of the reason system. It doesn't matter how long the cable is, how far the cable is, it goes about that one thing. In case it happens, I will show you all inverters. And the guys have the shortest cable, that's always the most damage happened. The shortest route takes the hardest milk. Doesn't matter what you say to me. Okay? And you can try and test it. Unfortunately, the inverter always showed me the shortest cable will get the most damage.
So when you do the earthing, you work along those lines. So you want to predict where you want the event to occur.
Yes.
So the principle of equal lengths for earthing should not apply.
Because then wouldn't it hit all the inverters then, instead of just one taking the hit?
A sacrificial inverter.
Yeah, wouldn't you sacrifice one instead of
Depending
6?
how where the fault is. So if you fault on this side of your breaker or that's on the side of the breaker. So remember, a fault can go through a house of 6 sub-dBs. If there's an earth fault, it can run all the way through to the last point because earth is not been braked. That's why it's so dangerous when people switch on sub-dBs, a 4-pole breaker, in my eyes. Because they break the neutral, then you can get a higher voltage running through. That's where the problem is, but always the best practice is. Remember, if a fault goes into a bar, or your earth bar, that's the law. So you cannot actually run this system if you work it out on a dB earth bar. Because that earth bar cannot handle the fault current that can occur on the system.
It's an interesting question. What is the fault current? It'll be on the spec sheet for the inverter. That'll be a couple of thousand amps.
Yes, I feel it's like 7,000
Yeah, probably, yeah.
on the 2000.
Just going back to your earlier answer about why these chassis are not earthed. And normally in the system, Victron speaks extensively about your protected earth and your
Because aren't these also supposed to be earthed to the batteries, the chassis?
the
It
chassis.
is earthed. That's what I said. Even if I disconnect all the cables, you'll still find a less than 0.2 ohms resistance between the chassis and that point of earthing there.
But why is Victron building that in, is my question.
Building
The
what?
chassis earthing instead
So
of...
if you install it on, just like any PPT, everything needs to have an earth point, a chassis earth point.
Yeah.
Is it an earth point?
So is it for boats?
No, it's a bonding. Is it earthing? If you say to me it's earthing, then I walk away because you know what you're talking about. You're bonding the casing for in case something goes wrong when someone touches the casing, they must go down. That's why it's bonding, it's not earthing. If you measure the regulation states when you do CSC and you put it from your main point of earthing, I measure 0.2 ohms here, the casing is bonded. But if I don't measure it here, I need to add additional bonding. You don't have to bond it. Some people bond it and practice it on a daily basis. But if I measure it right, I won't have an issue. It's about the guy that writes CSC on the end. There's nothing to do with the working of the system. The problem is if you have a wooden house, you want to bond this with a 6mm cable because there's no earthing at all. A normal house also. So if we install inverter, we install it on a metal plate. We bond the metal plate, so that is our main earth. Because something goes wrong, we got the metal plate. So all where you install it, how you bond it. There's not the earthing point. There's a bonding point.
Okay.
Technically, anything with an inverter doesn't have an earth output anyway.
Yes.
It's labeled PE.
It's a floating.
Yeah. Potential
P
earth.
is, yeah, or protective earth.
Yeah, protective earth.
Okay. We digress.
The most important is just to get your masters and slaves all in place.
Your earth measure when it's not connected to the output.
You can just continue doing until you have all of them.
Yeah, how do you test
That's
it?
phase
Test
2's
it,
first master, already in the correct position.
You must disconnect from the mains. Because people test the CSC.
Now it's
connects
2
to the
flash.
mains.
Yeah.
But actually,
You
it's not
stop
valid.
your one that you
So
already
this is the
have.
one inspector I know. It's,
That one is very,
He actually takes the neutron earth bond outside. And he said to install a test your CSC.
it's in the second
Because
position.
then it won't pass your earthing test. Then you must have your own earthing system installed.
The last one is obvious.
Right, and now if you have to now set it up, like you would do each one individually, how would you do that?
So first when you have all in the correct positions, you have to send the configuration. So that would be by configure, send configuration, to make sure that they're all set up in that positions you put them in.
So you
where's
set
that-
this up. Okay, it's busy resetting now.
Where is that configuration being sent to?
Send to each inverter's passports.
Oh,
Each inverter takes that as I am position 0, I am position 1, position 2, position 3, position 4, position 5.
okay. So there's no retention of that in the servo X if you add that control.
So your server will always be disconnected once you program your inverters. If you
Or
program
while you
them-
program.
while you program, yes.
Right.
So if you start programming this, make sure that there's nothing connected except the inverters.
I've done that. It didn't do any break anything, but it did bug out.
Yes,
I
but
didn't
they
know.
recommend try not to do it.
Yeah,
because-
yeah.
yeah. So then you have each one's position is programmed. You have the positions programmed, you can go to your first. This is where it gets very important, what I tell all my guys. You'll see there's a difference between your configuration between your first and your second inverter, always. Your master has much more priority what it does to the system, more choices it can make to the system than your slave will. So you'll see the difference in your ESS settings, you'll see there's much less choices in your ESS on your slave than there is on your master. So it's very important when you start your programming to start on your first phase, on your first master. You right click and you say V configure multi.
Okay, cool.
Ah,
So then you click and then it auto opens the V configure. So that's why I say, so I'll show you quickly if I load ESS on this inverter and I go into the next inverter and I load ESS on that one, you'll immediately see there's a lot less settings to be chosen because the master will make sure of the most important settings.
And the slave will just follow the
Same as
master.
the master. That's where you'll see the first 3 inverters on each phase. Lights are invert on constantly. The slaves will flash.
Okay, cool.
So I assume the charging settings will then be automatically followed across as well.
So it will cut everything in half.
Yeah. So it might be the same, it will be half. Yeah.
Yes, it will try to do exactly the same. So one thing that I always try to teach my guys is you can either take a long route or you can take an easier route. As soon as you start sending assistance, Victron states, and even on the app you'll see that you cannot send any assistance to all devices at once. You can't, because they will never be the same. They can't be the same. If I wire something to a relay on the AC output 2 on this inverter, but I don't do it to that inverter, the settings will be different.
Yeah.
This one will have that setting, that one won't. If I select ESS, ESS will always be programmed with the master. You send the ESS configuration through to them all, but your master will make sure of it happening correctly. That's why I said, once I send ESS to this one and I'll send it to its slave, it will have a lot less settings to choose, because your master will be in control of that. So you can send all of the settings across all devices all at once, except assistance.
So there's a question. If it's a three-phase system, you should only then have to do VSS on L1 master, and you should go to the other masters.
You should go to all three masters, because otherwise it will only do ESS on one phase.
Well, you can't do VSS on one phase then, so you'd think it would then do automatically all three.
Unfortunately it doesn't.
So that's fine.
So
To go to each one individually.
Or each of the masters.
yeah, each master individually, and I set the ESS on the slaves as well, but you'll see it will be, they call it a deprecated ESS. So it has all the settings, you still put in the voltages, but it will have a lot less, it's deprecated. So it follows the master where it's important, and where it's a bit less important, or in the case more important, because it has to follow the voltages of a battery. If any communication fails, that one still has the ESS settings on it. So that's what I would say to all my guys my own guys when I train, said this can take you an hour for sending each individual setting to each one. You can make mistakes, or you can take a little bit quicker and you know you don't make mistakes. What I do is, from your general tab all the way to your charger tab, those first tabs, like I said, it sometimes have that little thing in the backdrop. I always just click on the window at the bottom and it pops up. It says there's no assistance in the device at this stage. So from general tab all the way to your charger tab, you can even choose your virtual switch tab and say do not use virtual switch, but please make sure there's no assistance loaded on this tab. And then only can you choose send settings, all settings to all devices at once. Why I do this is then I am 100% sure, as an installer, I'm 100% sure that my amp hours, my AC input current limit, all the way through to my grid code settings, the inverters, charge voltages and cut-off voltages are all correct right through the bank to each one. Then I'll send all that settings, so I send all my settings to all devices. I know I haven't made a mistake, and I've done 6 inverters all at once. Where it takes longer is once you add the assistance. So you can't send, unfortunately you can't send them all.
You can do base settings for all.
But the base settings you can get out of the way.
Individually.
It makes it much quicker, because you don't have to each inverter set each voltage base, it makes it much quicker. So you'll see it starts by device 0 and it will end by device 5. For some reason Victron doesn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it goes 0, 1.
Well, it's probably because of
Starts
binary.
starts by binary 0.
But you're saying the base setting is now set for everything, but you haven't set
everything the
anything
same.
on the base.
No, I haven't changed any of the settings.
When you do the first one,
if you go into the first one and you change your settings to what your battery manufacturer says,
Yeah,
you must,
yeah.
your absorption and float voltages, all of that, it needs to be the same all the way through.
And then you
it
go
will never be different.
and then you go to your charge.
All the way to your charger as well. They'll all have
settings.
one battery. There's
Yeah,
one
yeah.
battery bank,
But-
so they all must be the same. Where it becomes different is with your assistance.
So you were saying you want to do everything in one go, and to do that you go to this assistance and make sure there's nothing.
Yes.
And go to your virtual switch and also make sure there's nothing happening there.
No, you can have it. It can be virtual switch can be off as well. Actually, it doesn't need to be off. You don't need to say do not use virtual switch. But if you start programming on a standalone inverter or inverter that has no programming in, it will always sit on this position where it says drive multifunction. Virtual switch doesn't matter that much. Where it comes to now, I'll show you what the error code is if I set the assistant on. So let's say you want to load ESS, your energy storage system, click all assistants, there's your ESS, energy storage system. If I click on ESS and I choose system uses life of lithium iron phosphate batteries with other type BMS, I'll skip most of this, or do not change your battery type, we've already set our battery type. So you go through all of this, I'll skip a bit, no PV inverters on the output. Look what happens when I say send all settings to all devices. I have a ESS now. The assistant setup will not be sent to the devices because assistant setup can only be sent when selecting this device as the destination. So in older firmwares, back in the day, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, this error didn't come up. It will send it all through to all devices. Then you'll get issues on site. You'll start to see that it doesn't read properly, they don't balance properly. ESS feeds more to one because the masters clash. It sees all as the ESS master. You want it to be this is the ESS master. So if I go back to that, so now it will force only feed to this. Even though I said all devices will force only to send assistance to the first one, to device 0. The rest of it will send the previous settings, but it won't send ESS through. So if I go now through ESS again, I'll show you once it has sent all the settings. I'll show you again ESS, the amount of settings that it has, and I'll go to the next inverter and I'll show you it's a lot less. You will see the differences. So don't have the dynamic cutoffs, the C rating, how much it will drop the voltage down on how much amps you pull on your discharge current. It won't have that on any of the slaves, it will only have it on the master. The master will make sure of that. Okay, so if I go back into assistant on ESS, we'll see it will ask you what type of battery it has, your battery capacity, ask you to configure battery type selection, your sustained voltage, your dynamic cutoffs, your restart offset, and PV inverters on the output for frequency shifting. Frequency shifting will be across all.
Sorry, and those settings that the prior 3 that you've just gone through, where do you get that? Off the spec sheet?
It will always be on the spec sheet, yes. If it is a partnership with Victron, it's like Volta and those batteries, they don't have full communication with Victron, so they don't have a page.
It's a Solar MD,
yeah. Solar MD is a full partnership with Victron.
Yeah.
They have a Victron page on the Victron Live page. They will have all their settings, even for ESS, they will have all the settings on there, according to what they tested will be on. So this is where it's also why I say you can't send to all 3. If say this is a 3-phase system, we set the 3-phase system up, but I choose I want to have a PV inverter like a Solus, a single-phase PV inverter, and I want it to run during load shedding. So I program it up, wire it to the ACR2, and I want to program the ACR2 settings to frequency shift it for that single phase. I'm only going to program this one and say this PV inverter on this one's output, not all 3 of them or all 6 of them, because that's only on a single phase, only on the output of the one inverter. That's where it becomes important. That's why it says don't send assistance to all across the board, because they won't ever be all the same. There will be slight differences.
So that PV inverter on the AC side, AC.
Sorry?
That one?
This one is wired to the ACR2 of the
AC
inverter.
side.
Yes. You can wire it to the ACR1 as well. The frequency shifting, you must make sure you program the frequency shifting in. You can wire it like that. The reason why we use ACR2 specifically is there comes certain milliseconds where loads drop. So a lot of people, Frank asked me this morning as well, sometimes, it was you that asked me, sometimes when there's a high load, your PV inverter will feed that high load, they switch the geyser off or the dishwasher off, that load falls away. Where does the power go to immediately? It feeds to your battery bank or it feeds back to the grid. So what we do is we put the ACR2 setting on a relay and we say if the battery's voltage goes 0.2 more than your absorption voltage, cut it off immediately. Safety of the battery comes first. That's why we use AC out 2 instead of AC out 1. If you do use AC out 1, you can use a contactor that you put in your TV and you put 1.5 wire or whatever to your contactor's coils and you switch the coils and do that as on voltage base. So let's quickly say if I send all settings to this device only, I'm going to quickly just show you, because it will mostly be the same all the way through depending on how you wired it and your ESS. If you have only used the ACO2 on this one, or if you only have the big inverter on the one, you'll program that on differently. That's all quite simple. The last thing I just want to quickly show you is how the ESS looks on the slave inverter. To see that, so we all saw there's quite a lot of questions they asked, the dynamic cutoffs, all of them are there. Once it's sent, I'll quickly just show you the ESS on the slave inverter. So if you go into, we're still by phase 1. We go to phase 1 slave inverter, B-config multi. Always welcome. Yes.
So how did you get to that slave one?
So I clicked on the second inverter's picture. Yes, that little picture, you can right click and say V-config multi. It's the same way I showed the LED flash. You also click right click and it will just say flash LEDs. Underneath flash LEDs will be V-config multi. That's how you get to the configure files.
To get your absorption voltage. So you'll push all the current in to reach.
So now it will immediately say there's currently no assistance in this device. So that shows again, even if I choose all devices, if you have the latest, only if you have the latest firmware of Victron, it won't send the assistance all across the board. If you have old firmware, it might still actually send ESS right through if you choose all devices. That's why I say make sure you say, if you send ESS, that's why I say program your inverters, do your assistance afterwards. Then you can go through each inverter and you can load your assistance separately, all your assistance.
So you are going to a slave now?
Yes, so I'm in the slave. If I go to assistance now and I add ESS, you'll see it will be a lot different.
Because now
Say start the system.
When it goes into overload, when your Wi-Fi line
You can choose uses the other type EMS. Ask you for the battery capacity again. Say do not change battery type. Skips all the rest, done. There's nothing more. There's no dynamic cutoff, not a frequency shifting, because it's the same phase. It will do frequency shifting together. There's sustain voltage is off, because that's all the master doing it. So that's why they say please send to each inverter different ESS. To how you program it to each one. You can't send the same, otherwise they clash. So that's why it's important. Okay, so you guys said you wanted to see how to update the inverter.
Do you not then do the firmware update before you start this process?
So that is a very good question. The problem with Victron is the firmware update isn't like a software download on your phone. It doesn't work the same. What it does is that it erases all of the firmware that's on your device and it re-uploads the new firmware. So you lose all your assistance, you lose all your settings, everything goes back to out of the box. As soon as you give a firmware update to inverter, it goes straight to backup out of the box.
But the server is also a firmware update, isn't it?
The
server.
The server, yes. The server's one works like your phone's update. It updates, it keeps the settings, it just gives a new firmware update.
So then when would it be possible to do that?
But only on the server, exactly.
Yeah.
Only on the server and MPPTs as well. MPPTs keeps their settings. Any bus products, you'll see, I can show you when I'll do a firmware update for you guys, I'll show you how it works. You'll see it literally says erasing all firmware and uploading all firmware.
But at which point do you do that?
When you start the install
Yes.
phase.
Yeah, so
Unless there's something like a fan update, because I know the last Quattro update, the fan was really loud,
Yes.
and the firmware fixed it. But if that doesn't apply to you, there's no point in updating firmware because you're creating work for yourself and you're not getting the benefit.
I like to do it again on a 6-month basis. We go to our sites, we wash all the panels, and we do a firmware update all across the board. Double check our settings, see if we can adjust it to make it a bit slightly better. We do it on a 6-month basis.
Can you be powered by batteries, or do you have to be powered by AC when you do a firmware upgrade?
When you do a firmware upgrade, your AC input should always be off.
And if load shedding starts?
No,
it's
your
off.
AC input should be off.
Okay, so
Only your
what I'm
battery.
saying, if the thing loses power while it's busy doing an upgrade for any reason, does it become a brick?
How do you mean? Do you mean like the firmware will stop and the inverter
Yeah,
will
so
get
it
damaged?
deletes the first one.
So your inverter will never get damaged by that. It will always have the communication through the Mach 3.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if you're busy updating the firmware
And everything
and
crashes.
it deletes, and you delete the firmware and then it crashes.
Won't be issue. You can still re-upload the firmware. So that's where Victron is very clever. You'll see sometimes, I don't know if you guys saw on your installations, the latest software of the servo, there came an error on the bus out. It said please update the MK3 dongle of your
I've
inverter.
heard that, yeah.
Yes.
Before it wouldn't let me do anything.
Yes. So what that means is the inverter has its circuit board, but it also has that same dongle we use to communicate. This little dongle. It's got that inner board inside here. So that is what you communicate to, and that sends the firmware to the rest of the board. So even if you go halfway through a firmware update, you crash the inverter, everything goes down, you can't damage it. You can still send firmware to that Mach 3 dongle. So it's dongle to dongle, it sends through. So you don't have to stress about that, you don't have to worry about that. You can always re-upload
But I mean,
your
yeah,
firmware.
that's rare.
Yeah. It's rare that it will ever happen.
You must just make sure your batteries are charged.
Yes.
Yeah.
I always put my outputs off and my inputs off. Because you don't want it to, because once you send a new firmware update, you go to standalone, like I said, out of the box settings. So you don't want your house to run out of the box settings.
Yeah.
So I bypass my system, switch AC input and the output off of the inverters. I literally switch off all the breakers.
Oh, I see. You're going to, but you're going to bypass mode.
Your bypass switch, you use your bypass switch, you switch over to ESCOM, you switch your inputs and outputs of your inverters off, and then you program or update your firmware and then program. That's what I would suggest. So if I could
Actually say that your AC should be off when you do firmware.
it does say your AC should be off, but that's where it gets catchy. Only on multi-compacts, small inverters. On a 3 kilowatt or 5 kilowatt inverter, it doesn't state that you have to do it, but you will hear a big issue in your inverter. And I would say please switch off.
Because the voltage settings are quite erratic on default.
Exactly.
So if
That
you
is
connect it to AC in, you know that
and your contactor.
I had an overcharge because of that, because I did it the first time, and the second time I did it all DC, and then I connected AC when it was right.
On your smaller inverters, like your 500 watts or 800 watts, 12 volts or 24 volts, it will just deny connecting to it if you have your input connected, your AC input connected.
Oh, that's cool.
It just denies connecting to it. On the bigger ones, it's not that big of an issue. I would still recommend just switching your AC input.
Yeah.
Like you said, you can damage your battery because you're charging at 57. I think the standard's 57.8.
Yeah, it's pretty high.
Ja. Allemaal in die middelposisie tussen. Ja.
So my inverter wat doen is wat kom, so daai load agter my doen. So aan my is dit
So what's very important, if you
All in the
Off, yeah.
off position, yes. So if you do a system that's big, you have 12 inverters or 24 or however you have in a bus configuration, you don't have to replug into each inverter when you update the firmware. You don't have to. The way the inverter knows that it needs to take firmware, you'll see now when I go into the program, it will say switch off and switch on. So I like to do it. 2 reasons. I'm lazy, I don't want to unplug and replug to each inverter. The second reason that I found out the hard way is you actually test your cables between the inverters. If you can't send through this bus port, through this cable to the last inverter firmware,
There's something wrong.
there's something wrong with your communication cables. So it helps a lot as well. So you start off, make sure all your V-Bus products are off. You use your VE Flash app to update your firmware
Do you do a backup before you flash it?
of your settings. No. There's a big reason for that. Also a brilliant question, and I also learned it the hard way. So I used to,
Sorry, what's the question?
You save your current firmware settings to reload them when after the firmware, so you don't have to manually reconfigure.
John does have an option in your configure files to choose. You click file and you can say save file, and you save that whole configuration. You can do that.
So to the whole system that you've set.
Yes, and you can save each individually. You can save all of them at once, and you can reload it up. You can do it. I learned the hard way. It's not a good idea to do it. So what happened was, I did a firmware update by a client's system, He had very old software. I think it was like 472 or 4. It's long back, old firmware. Loaded 508 up, the latest firmware. Problem is the firmware is not written on the same binary codes, or on the same, even on the same application where they write it. There's a new guy doing all the firmware at Victron in Netherlands. The old guy retired. He writes it in his way, he programs it how he wants to program it. It looks the same, but the code is different.
Yeah.
So now what happened to me was, I uploaded the new firmware, I went to the vconfig, I said load files, because I was lazy, it's quicker, load files, send configuration, boom, crash, dead. Now what? I was like, what's going on? So I upload the firmware again, the inverter comes on, it works, go into vconfig, load the settings again. I did it 3 times before I learned my lesson. I was like, what's going on? Every time I send the settings, switches off. What now? He said, what did you do? Did you copy your settings? I'm like, yes. He's like, don't do it. You're copying old firmware's settings to a newer firmware.
Change the registers. Oh, that's good.
Yeah. For me, what's easier is to take pictures. It's easy. Go through your windows, take pictures, put it in your site. It's easier. Less of a mistake that can happen. I learned it the hard way. I sat there for 2 hours trying to get it right.
So you're not downloading it onto the computer, you're physically taking...
You can save that file.
You can save it, like it's
a settings file. It's just a, what's it?
It's called a VSC file.
But it must probably be better on the phone, because then you can look at that while you're typing on your computer.
Yeah. But it's good to download the files anyways, just if you want to reference or have it as a proof of your settings that you did.
If you have to sort the unit out, you can put the same stuff in.
Yes, you can put the same stuff in. But if you jump larger firmwares, I would not recommend trying to load it up again. So okay, we want to update the firmware. I'll show you where to download the firmware as well. Click start. So you want to update your firmware. We're not going to do a device upgrade. Device upgrades is something we won't use ever in normal installations. You want to update the firmware of the device. You click next. It says here's the warning. Updating will reset any user-defined settings to default. That's what's important. That's why rather do your settings after you update your firmware, because you're going to lose all the settings and you have to do it all over again. Click next, it's going to ask you to select the file. So now, where do we get this file? That's why it's important.
It's from the professional side.
So yeah, you can get it off the professional file, but how do you know which code to use?
It's the first 2 numbers, the second 2 numbers, and the last 3.
Yes, that is the difference between the old pros and new pros. Large microprocessors and small microprocessors. But the most important for you to follow is your
the model and then the firmware.
It's the model and the
version.
firmware, yes. All the newest inverters will always start with 26. So I just want to quickly revert this one into standalone mode to show you where the easiest is. So I'm just going to say reset multi to standalone mode. Then select the COM port 6. Again, it will ask you all devices must please be switched off. And it will say switch on. So this is where Victron knows which one there's a lot connected. But because I switched this one on, it knows I'm communicating with this one alone.
But you switching to which position?
To the on position.
Inverter.
Position 1.
Only inverter, not inverter charger.
Well, no, it's, the back position is charger only. The front position is charger and inverter.
So it will be on, off and charger only. It's the easiest way to remember it. So it will send now, it reverts this to a standalone position now. Then I know it's a single inverter, because I want to now go into the normal config files. You don't have to, you can go into your VBus system configure. This was just a bit quicker for me to just show you where to do it. If you go into your normal vconfig by your COM port 6. So because I reset into standalone position, it loses all the assistance again. So if you want to know the digits like you explained, till 26, 20, whatever, and your firmware version, you go into vconfigure, you click target, and there at the bottom it says show software version. If you click on that, it will say 26.29.508. So we want to get firmware for 26.29. That's it's important.
So how do you know what those numbers are allocated against which devices?
Your first 4 digits, in this case 26.29, is for a MultiPlus 3 kilowatt. 48 volt 3 kilowatt for this device. So you can only send 2629 software to this device.
There must be a device list.
Yes. So that's where I'm going now. So if you go into Google, if you go to Victron Professional, you log in there, you'll see there's on the left hand side there's one that says firmware. That's where you download all your firmware. So my guys that I train that go through this list and they're like, yo, there's a lot of stuff. Which one? There's a lot of stuff. What I always ask them is, the port you plugged it into, you plugged it into the V-Bus port. It's a V-Bus product. So please go first look, if you update this one as a V-Bus product, go search for V-Bus products. There will be V-Bus, V-Bus and V-Bus. Now we're going further. V-Bus multis, inverters and quattros. This is a multi, it's MultiPlus. So we're going to go into that. Click on there. Now you get another drop down of clock. That's where it goes to the small microprocessors and the large microprocessors. That's where you said it's split into actually three number sets. Yeah. So it can be either 19, 20, 26 or 27. But like I said, all these products you use will always be 26. We'll always start with 26. We'll always use the large microprocessors.
The small is the Phoenix and stuff. Okay.
Yes. So we saw in this config, so I'll go back to your V config, we saw the software version is 2629, the first 4 digits. Yeah. That's where it's important. 508 is only the version of software for the 2629. We say we start by 26, there's 26. We always want the system firmware's worth. We want to load the system firmware. So we're not going to do deprecated or anything. We're going to download the system firmware's worth that. Now we go down the list. Now we'll see there's a lot again. So we search specifically 26, 29. We see 508 is the newest firmware.
They're all 508, you'll see.
They're all 508.
Because that's the current
one. So as soon as they launch...
if there's a stack of 508...
No, it will always be 508.
Oh,
508 is the firmware version.
Okay.
So 20 is your inverter model.
Yeah. So in 3 months' time or 4 months' time, if they launch a new version of firmware, they update it, they'll make it 509 or 510. Then all of this will change. They'll upload it to their website, and this will all be 2620, 509, 2629, 509. All will be 509 because that's the current version that's out, the latest version that's out. We can click 2629. We download that. As soon as it's downloaded, we can go back, close vconfig. Because we want to update the firmware, we go to vflash.
That's where that
start. Click on update the firmware, next. You select your file that you download, so you can press browse. There's the 2629 that we just downloaded. Open. Next. It says remove all connected accessories like the original multi-control, V-Bus, BMSs, power panels. As a GX, make sure that's all removed because you're sending firmware. You don't want it to send to devices that cannot be switched off or is connected to it. And it says when updating multi-compacts, like I said earlier, the smaller inverters like your 200 watts or 500 watts, the Phoenixes, all of them, they will say remove the AC input. Make sure it's not connected. Make sure DS1 is off and DS2 is off. You can always read what Victron says, it's always important. In case of a parallel or multi-phase installation, the devices have to update it one by one. That is why all is off. I only switch on the one I want to update. You can't update all at once. That will damage it.
So where's the DS1, DS2?
That is something that's not being used in this product.
Oh, okay.
That's more of offshore products.
It's smaller products. Another question. Can you update one and not the rest?
You can, but they won't communicate if they're not being sent.
Once you started this process, you've got to keep going to all 6 at once.
Yeah, one by one. But that's why I say you can have it plugged in by this, the bus is plugged in, the one you switch off and on will be the one being updated.
Yeah, sure, but you still have to go through 6.
You still have to go through
If you're a big installation, you're going to be there a long time.
Yes, exactly. That's why I say make it easier and quicker than to have to plug in, plug out. You don't have to do that. Test your cables while you do it. The one that you switch off and switch on will be the one being programmed with that firmware. So that's where it comes to the next page, and I will tell you. Okay, COM port, we know it's COM port 6. I can choose COM port 6, or like you can say auto detect COM port, it will find the one that's communicated. In that case, the inverter has to be on for it to pick it up. If the inverter is off, it won't know which COM port. There it says COM port 6, we can choose next. There you follow the steps, easy. So switch off device, all the rest is off. Disconnect main power only for multi-compacts. I would do it all across the board, like he said as well. As soon as it as soon as the firmware updates go, it reverts to standalone settings or standard settings, and it will start immediately charging a battery once it's connected to the base. Okay, next, now it says switch on device. I want to upgrade the firmware on this device, so I choose I'm going to switch this one on. Click next. And this is where it comes back to earlier where I said you'll see, okay, connection established, it's ready to program. Click next, it starts. Then it says erasing firmware. So now immediately it erases all the firmware. Now earlier, let's say what if something wrong happens? Plug out, inverter off, it freezes. Will the inverter work? No, inverter is in fault. But you can still fix it by reprogramming it. So I'll close the app first, cancel, halting process. Do you really want to stop? Yes. Close it, cancel, yes, close the app. Inverter is messed up, it won't work now. Let's see if we can go back, flash, start, update the firmware, browse, choose the right firmware, 2629. Next, prepare, we already disconnected all devices. Choose COM port 6, the COM port that your COM port uses. Switch off device, device is already off. Next one, switch on device, switch on device. See, press next. Trying to connect. Error connecting.
And during this time you're running with battery only?
Yes. Just see.
In this discovery got a limited flashing light cycle.
This is going to quickly error connecting. Let's make sure it's off. Off. There we go. They will erase all the firmware again and start reloading all the firmware up again. So I wouldn't recommend doing it. It's scary. I know it's scary. My heart is pumping now.
I didn't feel a thing that I could see you sweating.
I've been sweating, but it will work. But it's not recommended. Okay. No response from target. Oops. Oh, we'll get it right. If it doesn't work, I have a different way I can do it in the RMA center. I can fix it, but still wouldn't recommend doing what I tested.
But I mean, someone could walk over the cable and pull it out, you know?
Yes, they can do it.
So we'll have a clock.
Or load shedding, and you're saying in darkness and you stumble over the cable. Load shedding
That's very possible.
Multiple options. Or your laptop's battery stuffed and you lose the external power and
Yeah, the battery.
it freaks out.
It's filling up a bit faster now.
Now it's time for us to go.
There we go.
It's getting momentum.
Still sweating. Back to normal. So, but it will eventually work. But I would not still work.
And that brings us to the end of this video. If you've made it this far, I sincerely hope you have enjoyed the content and learned something new. If so, please leave a like and subscribe if you have, as well as to get notified of any future videos. Oh, and make sure to check out this video as well. You can also subscribe over here. And this one is pretty cool too. Lastly, don't forget to visit the BluePower Pro forum.